You are live in St. Louis, Missouri at Hangovers and Highs World Headquarters. Welcome to Hangovers and Highs. Today's episode seems to grab a lot of both Hangovers and Highs. Both stories have a lot of these components. So today's episode, episode 2, stuff like this happens. Smith meets Thomas. But before we get started, we want to acknowledge to everyone and respect everyone with what's going on, both with the pandemic and the riots, that to respect everyone, demonstrate peace. After all, that is everyone's goal. So stay safe, people. But we do want to take this opportunity to, because that is our job, to keep things light for everyone and people laughing and entertained. So I'd also like to take the opportunity to introduce our intern and rising permanent member, Christian Valvo. Christian is a friend of mine, a neighbor, recent Tulane grad. The dude is smart. He's funny. He's got a very dry sense of humor. And he also handles a lot of our IT and brings us our coffee. So thank you for that, Christian.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. And I thanks for bringing me aboard. You're the only person who is hiring convicted felons. And I really think you're presenting me with a beautiful opportunity here.
So everyone needs a second chance, and maybe your case is 3. But you may be asking, where's Brian? Our lifelong fans are asking, where's Brian? And, well, you know, my partner Brian Fox, after 1 week of really hard work putting it in, needed a well-deserved vacation and decides to hightail it to Captive Island with his hot girlfriend for 12 days of beach time and fun in the sun while I'm toiling up here, working away. You go, girl. So Christian, your input is welcome. And as you know, before I introduce Christian, in another aspect, you do know that Hangovers and Highs, the premise of our show is that everyone has hangovers and highs in lives. We've got that in our work, our school, our relationship, things of that matter. But the positive, upbeat notion is for every hangover, there's going to be a high afterwards. So we also have a new concept we're introducing this week called Hangover and High of the Week. So I'd like Christian to quickly talk about himself and what this segment is about.
So Drew, like you mentioned, we're kind of keeping in the true nature of the show. And we've got the Hangover of the Week and the High of the Week. So each week we're going to showcase Hangover of the Week, the worst event from the sports world in the last week, and the High of the Week, the best event, whether it was the best play, the best off-the-field action, the best display of humanity, whatever. We're going to highlight the best of the sports world for that week.
Well, yes. So thank you. So back to our story. Our High of the Week, we're going to feature J.R. Smith. And hopefully you guys know J.R. Smith. Remember him? He's a current free agent. He's played for the Denver Nuggets. He's played for the New York Knicks, Cleveland Cavaliers. Most famously, I think his most famous moment was with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and that's where I kind of named him Jamaican JR for a number of reasons, which you'll hear during this podcast. But I happened to be in Jamaica during Game 1 of the NBA Finals of 2018. I was vacationing with my family and 2 other families. It's the highlight of the year for these families. We all enjoy it. We're at a tiki bar. You know, you can just see under the big screen watching the game, the glistening rum bottles and things like that, and the red stripe beer. You've probably had a few of those, college boy.
You've got to be able to see through the smoke to be able to understand what's going on.
There's a haze. There's a haze down there, so we can get into that. But so we're vacationing. We're having an awesome time, and the finals. There's only 4.3 seconds left in Game 1, and it is tied. So it's nail biting time. So the coaches it's a timeout. Coaches are on the sideline, and they're explaining to the players. You can just see the coaches saying, shoot at the buzzer, shoot at the buzzer. They don't want Golden State Warriors, who's their opponent. And, man, how loaded were those guys, Christian? I mean, Steph Curry
and Clay, and it was the first year that Kevin Durant joined them after they had already won the
Draymond
championship.
Green doing the
Draymond,
like he's the Dennis Rodman, just dirty, kicking people in the groin.
He's the definition of a guy that you would want on your team, Drew. And he's
lunch pail.
I don't know.
He's just really just a
scrappy
guy. But anyway, the team's loaded. I mean, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry are 2 of the best shooters I've ever seen. So they don't want them getting the ball back. They want to, so shoot at the buzzer. So you see this. So let's get back to JR. He gets the ball and he starts doing this dribbling, Harlem Globetrotter act, dribble out the clock. He smile and then throws it to his buddy at the buzzer. Time expires, so that the time elapses, and it ends up going to overtime. And naturally, they lose in overtime, lose the series.
Oh, JR.
Oh, JR, yeah. And later on during the interview, he goes, man, I knew the game was tied. But then later on, he walks it back and goes, I wasn't sure of anything. So JR, and then the same guy says in an interview, I'm going to hit some green tomorrow. Hit some green. Now granted, I'm in Jamaica, but hit some green.
He needed some spinach. He was obviously referencing the fact that he didn't have his superfoods the day of the game.
Christian, it's legal everywhere. It's either weed, it's golf. He needs green at the ATM. I think all three of those things. You go to the ATM, you get your weed, you go to the golf course. Whatever.
That's America.
That is America. So, but also in his career, JR, let's go back a little bit. He had some controversy. He committed vehicular homicide when he was a teammate with Carmelo Anthony with the Denver Nuggets. And by the way, I felt Carmelo Anthony and is just completely overrated player. I think he's a me-first guy. I don't think he's done anything since he was a winner at Syracuse. But in the pros, for however god long and $100 million contracts he's had, he just hasn't done anything. So, anyways, for this vehicular homicide, and Christian, tell us a little bit about, because you were up on this story about who was involved, a friend or something. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. So, like you mentioned, he was playing in Colorado at the time, and this was during an off-season, or not an off-season break, but a break during the season. And he returned home to New Jersey, and he was driving himself, one of his a close female friend, and one of his best friends from high school, Andre Bell. And JR foolishly made the decision to swerve around a car stopped at a stop sign and ended up getting involved in a T-bone collision in the intersection. And JR was ejected from the car, and his friend ended up tragically perishing in the event. But it's not to harp on that or anything or lower the tone, but we figured we'd give the high or the hangover on the other side of the high.
Right, but the other thing, the sidebar with that story is he gets sentenced to 90 days for vehicular homicide.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I just laid out the details. And we know that J.R. Smith was clearly in the wrong here. That's unbelievable.
Right. 90 days, serves 24 days.
As if 90 wasn't ridiculous enough.
Right.
Of a short, half of a year.
Well, barely, what he missed, just a few games.
He could have missed the offseason and made all of his money during the...
I put a sheep on the roof of my high school. I almost got 30 days for that.
Yeah.
30 days, and no one died. And then years later, here in St. Louis, I get blamed for a global pandemic brought to anyway, I digress. More on that later. So fast forward to the now, because this is kind of topical to the now. During the recent riots out in L.A., JR really tunes up a guy, gives him a boot party, like 3 kicks to the head, a few punches to the face. Now to JR's defense, his car got vandalized.
I really think J.R. Smith is our high of the week because of the way that he responded to what happened. So
Well, before you, and I agree, I'm with you obviously on this, but if people were to look at it, without knowing what you're about to say, and without knowing the guy vandalized his car, you just see him tune up this.
Yeah, no, we just watched the video, and I'm sure everybody watching along at home is like, why the hell are you defending this guy? He just kicked the hell out of somebody on the street.
And you look at the victim, it's this kind of doughy white vandal person. I can't tell if it's a man or a woman. She, Shim is wearing a tracksuit, a wig, white hair. I mean, whiter than Edgar Winter. And that guy's an albino.
Well, at least it's before Labor Day, Drew. So he could have been committing a whole lot worse atrocity. But all jokes aside, I also had the same kind of fears that Drew did upon the first time watching the video. I'm like, oh my goodness, J.R. Smith just beat the hell out of a white lady outside his house. And then since the event has happened, JR came out the following day. He went on Pat McAfee's radio show and gave his side of the story. And prior to that, he had gone on Instagram. He took to Instagram to get his side of the story out and wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on. And Drew, we both thought it was a white lady, but he clarified and thankfully cleared everything up. It was just a little motherfucking white boy.
Motherfucking white boy.
Yep. And we're
Punk
not.
ass?
I think he might have been a punk ass little motherfucker, my boy. He probably was. Hey, we saw the video, or we know what happened.
Oh yeah.
But
Smashed his windshield.
to let you, yeah, exactly, like Drew said. So this guy smashed J.R. Smith's windshield. He was just vandalizing his car, and that was parked in front of J.R.'s house. And I think where all the pushback is occurring right now is on looters and people who are just hijacking this movement for their own personal causes. And I think the way that J.R. Smith responded to this really kind of refocused everybody. It did for me, at least. I mean, I'd known JR as this goof that we kind of portrayed in the first couple of minutes when we opened him up, or when we opened up with his stories. And he really, really changed my mind and kind of, he made some very moving statements. He regrets, he's very remorseful for what he did, despite the fact that we all know, Drew, he was in the right for doing that. If somebody walked in your driveway and just started smashing your windows in.
Oh, absolutely. But tell him the ironic thing, too, about the neighborhood and...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, I mean, this is the only black man on an extremely affluent in an extremely affluent neighborhood in Los Angeles. And for whatever reason, I really think this points out just how stupid these looters are and these people who are co-opting the cause. He vandalized the only black man on the block. A black man who had come from poverty and embodies the American dream. And he decides that is going to be his target to channel his hatred of white people towards, even though he's white. And I just salute to J.R. Smith. He following the video, he said that he's embarrassed for what happened, even though we're all on his side, as we've discussed, because he didn't want to show that side of himself to his 4 young daughters.
Yeah, well, he said that ass whooping for that random act of stupidness was a random act of stupidness on my part too. But I agree that the guy deserved it, and the good news is the guy walked away, wasn't like ran away. Like completely comatose or anything like that. Did get away. But I thought a funny thing also was that some of JR's posse was all along saying, put your cameras away, put that, respect his privacy. There's a million cameras out there, going on. Everyone's got it. So for that, I think he deserves our high of the week.
Keep fighting the good fight.
Keep fighting the good fight. That's the good fight.
Fuck looters.
That guy's not an activist.
No,
right?
at all.
He's
no, he's a piece of shit.
He's a criminal. Piece of shit. Is being mean to piece of shit. So anyway, how does Smith meet Thomas? J.R. Smith? Well, this leads to our hangover of the week, Earl Thomas. So Earl Thomas, this guy's had some highs. Ex-Seattle Seahawk, the Legion of Boom, that famous defense, Super Bowl champs. They won 1 Super Bowl. Let's remember that. 7 Pro Bowls. He was all decade.
All decade in a decade in which Troy Polamalu and Ed Reed also played safety.
But they retired.
It was a tail end, but still, I mean, Bob Sanders was in there.
Yeah,
it's an impressive.
No doubt.
He's the guy with the Chiefs, Eric Berry.
Eric Berry. Yep. Sanders got injured a lot, but he played for University of Texas under Mac Brown. So, but a lot of people say his hangover started and got him out of Seattle. He flipped off. He was injured, being kind of carted off the field. He flips off Coach Pete Carroll and the Seattle fans. I kind of applaud this because I don't applaud.
As do I.
But I have a Seattle buddy who we'll probably bring on in the show at some point. He's wildly entertaining in some regards, but very knowledgeable. But he's just nauseating about his Seahawks every Sunday, just pummeling us. And about, full disclosure, Christian's a huge Steelers fan too. And
here we go, Steelers. Stairway to 7. Here we go, Allegheny County.
Isley, Chip Chop Ham.
Down there at the Tree Rivers.
So anyways, they just can't get over themselves. We beat them in a Super Bowl. They're always blaming the refs. It's just nauseating. We can't talk about that enough. That's just talking about Earl Thomas a little bit.
Well, no, that's so like we were talking about earlier. We like to contrast the highs with the hangovers. Mm-hmm. So this is our hangover of the week. We're going to start off on his highs, and Earl Thomas has had a more impressive NFL career than 99.9%.
Oh, absolutely. But I would, now that he's gone from Seattle to our arch nemesis, the Ravens, I'd like to emphasize the Hangovers. So,
yes.
So,
Please.
before we get into the Hangover, Christian, if you're going to step out on your wife, well, you're not married, but step out on your girlfriend or something. Would you
Baby mama.
Would you bring your mother, your brother?
I would not bring my mother to the trail.
Would you bring your brother along? And more on that later. So, so Earl's married. He's got a wife, Nina. They've got 3 kids. And so one morning in Austin, Texas, during quarantine, Earl's drinking. So take it away from there, Christian. Tell us what goes on there.
So this one morning is April the 14th, 2020. And Earl and Nina...
Nina, the wife, yes.
Yes, Miss Nina. So they got into a bit of a disagreement, about Earl's drinking. And we can only presume that if they were fighting about drinking in the morning, Earl had probably imbibed un poquito, to use the lingo of Texas.
Right down near the Rio. Good job.
Right down there.
2 lanes paying off.
So, like I was saying... So, this is morning of April the 14th. Nina and Earl get into this argument. And so Earl just decides he needs to blow off some steam, get out the house. He calls up his brother Seth. And Seth comes by, picks him up.
Wait. You got Seth, you've got Earl, you've got Nina. I mean... Let's look at these. I feel like I'm in a Jimmy Stewart 1940s black and white movie.
Yeah, or maybe like a 1500s English dynasty.
Oh yes.
Earl
Great.
Princess Nina.
It's my money that paid for everything. It was my trust fund. Connecticut, Montauk.
Seth would be quite displeased.
So, anyway, we digress. So go back. Brother picks him up. Right.
Yep.
They're going to.
Where
are
Seth
they going?
comes by. So. They're headed towards an Airbnb, and so it's not only Seth and Earl going to this Airbnb. They also had invited a few local entrepreneurs, shall we call them, a couple of young ladies that just really had that entrepreneurial spirit and that desire to make a buck. So
must be the technology industry they're in or something.
I think so.
Austin,
exactly. Yeah, Austin, very high tech, progressive place. So. Earl and Seth, they meet up with these entrepreneurs, and they start to get to play a game of... Well, first of all, they take off their clothes, and then get to play a little game of Texas Twister, which we've all played, Drew.
Texas Twister, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We played all the time in the H&H headquarters here.
Yeah, we do. We have our own Tucson Twister near Tucson
That's how
Ferry.
we loosen up for the episodes.
Tesson Ferry. What am I saying? Tucson. We're confused with this. But, here's where technology, since we're talking, Austin and entrepreneurs and things of that nature, I think technology betrayed old Earl. I can call him old Earl, where Snapchat foils him twice because, first of all, this guy's not really, he's as sharp as a marble, as I like to say. He's not really tactful. He posts a video on Snapchat of him with these ladies. So Miss Nina finds it. She logs into a Snapchat account, finds it, and then further, she tracks his whereabouts to the Airbnb, so knows exactly where he is. And then what happens after that?
This is where things really start to get interesting, Drew. So Miss Nina and her entourage approach the building. Nina is strapped with Earl's favorite 9mm.
Always a 9.
Goddamn
Always.
right.
Goddamn right.
9 or down, baby. So Nina and her entourage, they enter the Airbnb. Nina brandishes the firearm. She holds it up to Earl's head. And this is where it starts to get a little dicey, Drew. So Nina was obviously only trying to scare Earl and just kind of give him like a wake-up call. So in doing that, she decided, I'll take out the magazine. I'm just going to brandish the empty handgun and kind of intimidate him. However, what she didn't realize, Drew, is that there was a bullet in the chamber. And you've watched Tiger King, right?
Yes.
It's sweeping the nation. Tragically, that is how Joe Exotic lost one of his husbands. And we're very thankful that Nina Thomas did not lose her husband in a similar manner.
And the Ravens almost lost to safety, yes.
Yes, well,
yeah, but a couple
looking
of
forward to
husbands.
next season.
Yeah, but not realizing the bullets.
Juju would have been open over the middle a lot
more.
more.
A lot more than having his head ripped off.
That's a horrible thing to say. The views expressed by Christian Balba do not represent the views by his employer, H&H Podcast.
Thank you for that. So I think was also interesting that this is a family event, right?
Absolutely.
So Nina brought her sisters along.
Yep.
To this and one of them was whipping around a knife.
I got something for all y'all hoes.
That's what she yells out, and man, that just sounds like a Samuel L. Jackson line. Totally.
Or the sort of thing Drew says when he walks into a strip club.
With a load of crumbled...
With a wad of crumbled ones.
Crumbled ones, but
wrinkly pants.
When I announced that I'm the founder of Hangovers and Highs, the velvet ropes part, and there I am. So, no, but the good news is, nothing happened to Earl. So
yeah, thankfully, and we make a lot of jokes on this podcast. Thank God that nothing horrible happened.
But he did get his nose smashed in.
He did. He got a little pistol whipping. He definitely wore the wounds the next day. And so here's the funniest thing is that they kind of figured out that. So like we said before, it happened on April 14th, and it didn't get revealed until May 7th, Earl's birthday. So they kind of got tipped off that TMZ was going to release this story because I think that the case had become public or something, and through some Freedom of Information Act or something, people somehow found like the court documents and everything. And so as a belated birthday gift on May the 8th, Miss Nina presents Earl with the piece of jewelry that we see right here.
Wow. Yeah.
And
can I again with remember with Kobe, God bless his soul, but when he stepped down on his wife and she caught him in all sorts of problems, that he gave her like a 30-carat, pink diamond or something just to make the piece. And
yeah.
Sounds like Nina's doing with this, Aztecian diamond-studded gold, whatever it is.
Well, Drew, I mean, I obviously, you have pointed out that I'm not married and have never found love and never will.
Your mom loves you.
Yes. At least I got her. So you are happily married. Have you ever committed an offense where you felt it necessary to buy your wife a gift to kind of atone for what happened?
There's always Applebee's.
There it is. Yes.
I got to pay
on
homage
Monday.
to a
It's on Monday. We gotta get
sponsor.
yes.
We are in Missouri, so no, but I mean, and like nothing that egregious or God, I don't have the
that
means
gaudy
or that gaudy.
Yeah. So I mean, and we're making fun of it. The reverse side of the chain is very meaningful. That's Earl's late grandfather, and he was very close with this man. So
wow,
I think
single tear with the grandfather.
Absolutely, and you know what? Nina Thomas, at the end of the day, she's a thoughtful woman. Who? I mean, what kind of monster would hold her husband at gunpoint and not buy him something like this?
That is.
She's a real sweetheart.
The single tear, I feel like the Indian on the side of the highway. But we like to pile on Earl too because he hit Mason Rudolph. Poor Ben Roethlisberger was injured this year, and Mason Rudolph had to back him up, and he hits him, lights him up. I mean, after he threw a pass,
and
he was unconscious.
And before that game, Mason was riding the long bus with the team to every single game.
Yeah.
And once that occurred, the Steelers organization, for the first time in history, and God bless Art Rooney II, they purchased a short bus to accommodate for Mason Rudolph's injuries. And
if you take a look, the short bus.
So for our YouTube fans, you can clearly see the image in front of you right now.
Yeah,
Spotify fans.
Protocol, when a player's down like this, he's not moving. They cut his guard off, his
face mask,
his face mask off, and he just the helmet without the face mask. It's just it was even barely like just a couple bar face mask to begin with. Anyways, probably why he got concussed. And he looks just like he's a crayon eater. Yeah. He is on a short bus a little bit.
Special Olympics wrestling team.
I mean, it's really rough optics for Mason. But so for those things, and Earl and Nina and I guess the Thomas family get our hangover of the week. We feel deservingly so. Guns loaded. Brother orgies, things like that in Austin.
But Drew,
well deserved.
Stuff like this happens.
Stuff like this happens. And that's where the quote came. Stuff like this happens. And our high of the week, like we said, we'll go back, end on that positive note, even though we started with high, went to hangover. Yep. That JR, clearly there's some frontier justice. We may use that phrase in every episode because we said it last week some way, shape, or form. But that's about it. So thank you so much for any parting thoughts, Christian?
No, I mean, I thought this was a really great episode, Drew. I appreciate you guys having me on. I hope you
Christian. Double vanilla latte. Skinny next time. Okay?
Yes, master.
Out.